We're lucky to live in a world full of amazing things, but there are plenty of them that don't get the recognition they deserve. You've probably heard of the pyramids of Egypt and Stonehenge, but what about the incredible wonders we're about to show you in this video? Some of them are so incredible that they might seem like they're not even real, but they are. And if you're someone who loves to travel, you can go see them all for yourself. There's a whole world below our feet that we never even think about. Take the region of Dobrogia, for example, an ancient territory that sits between modern Bulgaria and Romania. In 1916, archaeologists digging deep below the plateau of Limanu in Dobrogia made a strange discovery. Beneath the usual pottery and ceramic fragments, they found painted walls and ancient Roman and Greek graffiti. The deeper they dug, the more astonishing the discoveries became, until they realized that they'd unearthed a whole ancient tunnel network. The system of tunnels is almost a labyrinth, and it branches off into so many rooms and caverns that you could almost describe it as a series of bunkers. Even though it was totally unknown to the experts of the time, the paintings on the walls indicated that it was built over 2,000 years ago, and had remained in use until at least the 10th century. The tunnels run on for over 12,000 feet, and yet chisel marks indicate that they were all dug by hand. This is an astonishing feat of labor, and yet we have no idea why it was done. Crystal skulls are among the most contentious discoveries in all of archaeology. Experts are divided on whether they're genuine ancient artifacts or more recent fakes, and they've even served as the inspiration for an Indiana Jones movie. So far, 13 purported crystal skulls have been found, all of which are crafted from solid blocks of quartz with astonishing precision. The earliest record of them comes from the beginning of the 19th century. At the time of its alleged discovery, the first crystal skull was claimed to be between 2,000 and 5,000 years old. That claim is impossible to verify because quartz cannot be accurately dated. It was also claimed that the first skull was discovered in an ancient Mayan temple. That claim cannot be verified either. However, there's reason to believe that they might be fakes. A 2007 analysis of 4 of the skulls carried out by a team of American and British scientists concluded that the technology used to create the skulls wasn't available until the 19th century, and that 3 of the skulls had 20th century origins. Of course, the counterclaim is that the ancient Mayans may have had technologies we don't know about. This debate probably won't end anytime soon. When you catch your first glimpse of the Dragon's Eye stone mine in Lancashire, England, your first thought is likely to be that it must be a movie set. Perhaps the latest Hobbit or Lord of the Rings movie was filmed here, or maybe it's been earmarked for the next installment of the long-running Indiana Jones series. Actually, it's nothing of the sort. The unique appearance of this mine has come about by accident rather than design. This location was originally known as the Hall of Giants Stone Mine, itself an impressive name, but gained its even more impressive nickname when the mine roof collapsed, exposing multicolored sediments in the rock and creating a huge, round rock formation that's said by everyone who sees it to look like the eye of a dragon. Its curved appearance is actually an optical illusion. When you're standing underneath it, the partially collapsed roof is perfectly flat. The roof collapse has made it unsafe for the mine to continue operating, but at least it's given Lancashire a new tourist attraction as compensation. Visitors technically aren't allowed in, but plenty of them find a way regardless. There's no shortage of candidates when it comes to trying to work out who made the so-called eye idols of Tel Brak. They're ancient, and they come from a part of Syria that was once occupied by the Sumerians, the Akkadians, and the Babylonians. That means we can narrow down the field, but we don't know which culture to thank for the curious alabaster statues. They range in size from a few inches to 1 or 2 feet, and they've come out of the ground in the shadow of a structure known as the Eye Temple. The bulging eyes of the carvings, which may have been used as tributes to the gods of the temple, have prompted a lot of UFO conspiracy theorists to suggest that this ancient Syrian culture might have had contact with extraterrestrials. But it's likely that they have a more symbolic meaning that we, with our modern eyes, aren't able to decipher or understand. Perhaps everyone's got it completely wrong, and these are actually nothing more than harmless statues of owls. That seems unlikely, though. A spiritual meaning is the most obvious answer, but the answer doesn't cover all of the questions. It's generally believed that the most popular musical instrument in ancient Egypt was the sistrum, and yet it may not have been used as a musical instrument at all. This is what a sistrum looks like, and if its design is familiar, it's probably because you've seen it on hundreds of ancient Egyptian carvings and paintings without ever realizing it. According to legend, shaking a sistrum brought good fortune. If the Nile was flooding, you shook a sistrum at it. If your loved ones were sick, you shook a sistrum at them too. The instruments could be made from almost any material, including brass, clay, and wood, and made a loud jangling sound when shaken. Based on the works left to us by the Egyptians, they appear to have been owned by women more commonly than by men. Curiously, examples of ancient Minoan sistrums have been found in and around the island of Crete, and appear to have many similarities with the Egyptian variants. Even more curiously, the clay versions of the instruments can't possibly have created a viable sound for music. So what purpose might they really have served? The entire archaeological site of Sayhuite in Peru is full of ancient wonders, but because of the existence of the marvelous Sayhuite monolith, everything else almost gets forgotten. Many centuries ago, Sayhuite was where the Inca people came for ceremonies, gatherings, and religious festivals. During those occasions, they gave thanks to the water gods, and we believe that water is what the Sayhuite monolith is all about. What historians can't agree on is how far that water connection goes. One theory is that it's just an elaborate sculpture carved with decorative channels that allow water to run across it. Some experts believe it has a much more sophisticated purpose, though. They believe it's a topographic mini replica of Sayhuite as it appeared at the time, and the monument is a sort of scale model city that they could use to plan and test irrigation systems. There certainly seem to be areas of the monolith that make sense as rivers and water tunnels. If this really was an irrigation testing device, the Inca may have been even more ahead of their time than we already believed. At the very top of Mount Nemrut in Turkey, a location that involves climbing a little over 7,000 feet to reach, you'll find a series of large statues surrounding a tomb. We know that the tomb is approximately 2,100 years old, but we don't know why it was built in such a hard-to-reach location or who it was made for. Most historians agree that the occupant was likely an ancient ruler, but we don't know which people he ruled over. The obvious answer is King Antiochus I Theos of Commagene, as a statue of his likeness exists at the site, surrounded by further sculptures of giant heads and animals. The identity of the other giant heads is unknown, and the reason that we can't definitively say that the tomb belongs to the king is that his burial chamber has never been found. Despite every piece of evidence at the site seeming to point to him being buried there, the chamber itself is still hiding from archaeologists. Is the entire site a ruse of some kind? Like one big ancient joke? Or is the tomb buried deep inside the mountain somewhere? We could talk about the ancient wonders of Peru all day, but for now, we'll limit ourselves to talking about puquis. It's thought that this hydraulic system was created by the Nazca culture, who were also responsible for the world-famous Nazca lines. From above, this site looks like a series of spiral carvings and could be interpreted as a work of art. but it serves a far more practical purpose than that. The spirals are surface channels leading to reservoirs and aqueducts beneath the ground. Thanks to the existence of pukuis, the people who lived here in ancient times had a supply of water they could rely on throughout the dry season. That was especially important in this part of the world because the dry season could sometimes last more than a full calendar year. Such is the sophistication of this water system that archaeologists initially assumed that it must have been created by the Spanish after their arrival in the region, rather than the people who were here before them, who were assumed to be too primitive to have come up with them. That assumption was both arrogant and racist. The Spanish used this system, but they didn't create it. The site of Sahasralinga in India is as popular with science fiction fans as it is with archaeologists. That's because the numerous carvings in the stunning rock formations at the site look so much like the famous dials from the Stargate series. You'll find the carvings in Karnataka if you ever want to go and take a look at them yourself. Not even the local residents know who made these carvings. The site was deliberately flooded to become a reservoir many years ago, and it seems that all knowledge of what happened before was lost at that time. When the reservoir was drained and Sahasralinga was revealed, archaeologists had no idea what to make of it. Some of the shapes and carvings come with inscriptions, but unfortunately, the inscriptions are too badly weathered for us to be able to make any sense of them. Curiously, there's no sign of any tool marks in or around any of the carvings. It's almost as if they were made using some kind of advanced stone-cutting technology, but that would be impossible. As far as we know, no such technology existed when the stones were cut. This is now a world-famous site, but we still know precious little about how it was created. While most caves are carved by nature, some have been created or enhanced by human hands. The Barabar Hill Caves are a great example of what we mean. Located in India, the Barabar Caves were carved during the days of the Maurya Empire over 2,300 years ago. The distinctive entrance to Lomas Rishi, the most famous of all the caves to be found here, is the earliest known surviving Chhatra arch. The design was a staple of rock architecture in India for centuries, and may have begun here. It's believed that builders created the design in wood first, and then moved on to replicate their work in stone after perfecting the design. Going back to times of antiquity, the caves were used as a sanctuary by religious sects and their leaders, including Makali Gosala, the founder of the Ajivika sect. Some of the inscriptions that can be found within the caves also have Hindi and Buddhist relevance. The dual internal chambers of the caves have been polished so that any chanting or singing that went on within them would echo. Next, we have the Shell Grotto of Margate in England. This might not be as ancient a creation as some of the places and artifacts we've looked at in this video, but it's just as mysterious. The official version of the grotto's history is that it was discovered by accident when a farmer dug a little deeper into his land than he intended to in 1835. After smashing the grotto's roof, he jumped down through the hole and found himself standing inside a massive structure covering over 2,000 square feet, every inch of which is covered in shell mosaics. It's impossible to count how many shells there are inside the grotto, but it's at least 4 million. The shells have been tested and proven to come from the local area, but the style of the design takes elements from ancient Greece and the Middle East. Unfortunately, it hasn't been possible to perform carbon dating tests on the shells. The farmer offered guided tours of the grotto to the public long before he let archaeologists in, so by the time he did, everything had been contaminated by the gas lamps he installed on the walls so people could see in the dark. Finding an old Roman mosaic in Italy might not sound especially rare or implausible at first, but wait until you hear where this one was discovered. It's the beautiful floor of what would once have been an enormous Roman villa, and it was found beneath the mud and grass of a vineyard in Negrar di Valpolicella, slightly north of Verona. The frustrating thing about this discovery is that it could have been made a century ago. Archaeologists noted the presence of Roman artifacts in the vineyard in 1922, but decided there was no point doing any further digging and left the scene alone. If they'd gone another few feet into the earth, they'd have found the mosaic floor, which is covered in fantastic depictions of birds and fruits there and then. The vineyard is part of a commune, so any further excavations will have to be carried out with the permission of the commune's occupants, who would presumably have to be financially compensated for the temporary or permanent loss of their vineyard. That extra layer of complication might mean that the full villa is never excavated, and we never get an answer to the question of who thought planting a vineyard on a mosaic floor was ever a good idea in the first place. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!